Hey guys, welcome back. It's time to look at another CGC oopsie doopsie. This time, with no surprise, I said it was going to happen. It's happened before. We got CGC in another situation where they're calling stuff an error that they shouldn't be calling an error. If anyone knows CGC, it seems like that's their new strategy now. Why would you send it somewhere else? We're going to put error on the label for you. We're going to accept your hand cut, self-cut, non-factory cut cards, even though we say we don't accept them. We're not going to mention that on the label. But here's a prime example of what I said is going to happen, has happened. It's going to happen. When you start tossing out error onto everything without knowing for sure that it's an error, you're gonna get situations like this where you embarrass yourself. This is exactly that. I mean, people are probably still gonna send them cards because they're hoping for that stupid error designation on it. Again, the error designation that they've over pumped to the extreme, not as bad as their inadvertent early release stolen card grading system, reward for stealing cards or buying stolen cards. Here we have it. We have the prime example here of why they need to be careful when they're designating errors. This is probably largely why the other grading companies will not put error on their stuff. We have a Charizard here, and you would think that you'd at least look into the origin of the card. It looks like damage to me at first glance, but that's not what CGC is calling it. They're calling it an obstruction. So what they're saying is during the printing process, something was obstructing the ink layers, and I don't know how in the world you would ever have something that's obstructed like this, where it looks like it's just straight up and peeled off the front of the card. And we're gonna touch on that. Is it gonna surprise anyone? This is not an error. This is not an error. It shouldn't have been graded an error. It was not an obstruction. It's damage. It's damage on the card. All right. So I'd really love to know what their exact process was for determining that this was an error, that it was an obstruction, and not just the ink being pulled off of a card. We have some posts, and this is where the original owner or the previous owner of the card has noticed this bad boy, because they used to own the card. And it popped up now in a CGC case. The previous owner who graded it with PSA, we're going to see what they have to say about this. And I appreciate them reaching out to me. It is greatly appreciated. All right, now we can see here. I guess they're saying Bowman's 1951 was kind of questioning whether the grade should have been a 5.5 surface with this much card missing or ink missing off the front side of it, and then they discovered that I guess they had reached out and told them, the original owner had reached out and told them, hey, I used to own this card. It was a PSA 1 at one point in time. What are you doing? Okay, so here we have it. Story of Brian. Thank you very much for reaching out to me, providing some information. He made some posts of his own as well. So we're going to read his posts. He sent me some messages on a Discord here. We're going to read through the story, the backstory on this error CGC Charizard. I mean, conveniently, it's a Charizard too, right? You gotta, and it goes without saying, I'm assuming that the person that submitted to CGC or the person that purchased it when it was in the PSA slab knew that it was damaged, but we don't know exactly whether they were trying to trick CGC, whether they were trying. I would say that there's a good chance that if they were sending it to CGC and cracking it out of the PSA 1 slab itself, they were probably going for that error. Whether or not they actually thought it was an error, that's a different story. If you're the person that submit this to CGC, if you would like to reach out to me and provide some information on that side of things, I would gladly hear it. So we're not sure exactly if it went through multiple hands after story of Brian, but here it is. He says, hey Rattle, long story short, CGC graded a base set Charizard card and deemed it a misprint by obstruction when it was actually just a card taken out of lamination and part of it was peeled off. It's blowing up on Twitter in the sports world. And the now owner has the card up for $100,000 on PWCC and just hope someone isn't duped into thinking the card is an actual error and not a scuffed up Charizard. I'll provide more backstory in a longer message. Here's the PWCC link, screenshot of when I had it as a PSA 1 and the Twitter post that has been blowing up. So we'll take a look at this is the cert lookup, which is still not disabled. We'll get into that in a minute here. We have the Twitter post that we took a look at there, the Bowman 1951. He says above is the Twitter page that posted about the card. The screenshot is of my eBay page when I sold the card as a PSA 1. So I have seen the receipts that he did grade the card. He has everything on there. We can take a little look-see at that later on, just to get full confirmation that this isn't just someone saying that it's not an error. They own the card before. They peeled the lamination off of it. All right, so they say, backstory. I purchased a childhood collection from a guy, and he mentioned that when he was a kid, he laminated his most valuable cards, thinking it would protect them. This is a thing that has definitely happened. Usually someone doesn't do their entire collection. Someone's like mom or dad works somewhere where they have access to a laminator. Maybe they had one at home, and they laminate the cards. Terrible idea. For anyone that doesn't know, you can't just pull it off without damaging the card. So one side is not sticky, the other side is sticky, that sticks to the other side. Man, I'm surprised lamination hasn't really been a thing. It was really big at one point in time. I then got home and tried to peel off the lamination to see if I could salvage the cards. It didn't work, and nearly all of the top layer of the colored part of the card was pulled off. This base set Charizard was the only one that came off partially. I kept all the top layers of the cards peeled, but I can't find them for the life of me. I will keep checking because the missing layer is present on the lamination, and it would be a smoking gun. I have one of a Mew he laminated that pulled off the whole layer, and then sent it to eBay. Tried to get a PSA 1, which it did. I honestly thought they would send it back because of how bad it was. I put it up on eBay and someone bought it outright without haggling. Yesterday, my card collector group sent me a Twitter post that I linked above. I had to do a double take because I recognized the scuffed up pattern. It's pretty recognizable, I will say that. I thought someone had photoshopped a picture of the sold listing on eBay and put it into a CGC 5.5 error label. But I was able to get the cert number and see that CGC actually graded the peeled card and deemed it an error. Oh my god, you can't make this stuff up. I'm going to turn my office upside down looking for those peeled holo cards to find one for that Charizard. My Instagram is at StoryofBrian and have a couple posts about the laminated cards. I have one of the Japanese Blaine's Charizard that multiple people offered to buy, but I told them the truth about the lamination and wasn't going to sell it. I'll send you some pictures of the other cards I peeled and eventually, hopefully, the actual peel of the card. Okay, so let's get into the posts here. We'll take a quick look at the posts. Here we have the CGC post. We got the little exclamation mark. CGC deemed a card that I peeled lamination off of an obstruction error. I bought it from a collection months ago and tried to remove the card from the lamination, but it peeled part of the card off. So I sent it to PSA and they graded it a 1. I sold on eBay and then found out yesterday that someone had regraded it with CGC and posted on PWCC for $100,000. This is not an error. It is just a scuffed up peeled card. It's blowing up on Twitter and people think it's an actual error. I'm currently looking for the top layer I peeled because I'm pretty sure I kept it. I contacted CGC and Rattle Pokemon to see if he can be removed from the cert before someone puts too much faith in CGC cards and buys this delaminated card for a ridiculous price. That's the thing too. As far as I know, I'm not saying that CGC wouldn't kind of like bail out a buyer here because it wouldn't entirely be their fault. If someone purchased this for $100,000, then are they going to make it right on that buyer that was fooled into thinking this was an error? Again, it's just like, why are you putting your name on this stuff if you're not 100% certain? And the answer is they want more submissions. They want more notoriety. They're like, oh man, they were probably just creaming their pants when they saw this thing. They're like, oh, we can grade this. We can call it an error. People are going to post it all over the place. It'll sell for $100,000. We can get all of the CGC praise and hand jobs every day for this. It's advertising, right? Everyone's gonna have faith in CGC. We showed some. Remember the Protos toys? We showed science in that that article that we put together on that one. Never mind the fact that most of the backstory was from people that own copies of the card. Forget that part. Science proved that the ink was real. Well, science didn't prove that the ink was missing on this because it was laminated at one point in time. So here's the sold We got another one of these bad boys here, another post, and we have some more pictures. I think some of them maybe I have included or not included, but here's some Japanese cards that came from the same collection. So Story of Brian says, here are some pictures of other cards from the laminated collection. These ones were Japanese, so I think the lamination melted to the stock better than the English Charizard. It's kind of interesting. I'm kind of surprised that it didn't pull. There's like a white layer, for anyone that doesn't know, underneath that sometimes is missing or sometimes is faint. So then you get kind of a bleed effect, and sometimes can be shifted. So for anyone that doesn't know, there's a white layer that goes on there first. It's weird that the lamination doesn't peel that, but for whatever reason, maybe it adheres better than the colors that are over top. Maybe different ink, different material that's used. I found the peel of the Fossil Mew and still searching for the Charizard peels to end this fiasco, lol. I have nothing to gain from this and just want to tell people that I have a good relationship with this hobby, not to consider sending others for this card. All you really have in this hobby is your reputation, and I wouldn't tarnish mine just to make up a story. I think CGC was doing a good job filling the role of recognizing legitimate errors when PSA wasn't, but I think they ran a little too far with the praise and are now authenticating errors without doing proper due diligence. Do better, CGC. So that's the thing too. It's the same thing as the cards that were on the sheet, the double printed cards that were on a sheet that someone cut at another factory or by themselves, or they contracted someone to cut the cards that wasn't Pokemon. They weren't factory cut. They shouldn't have been graded, and they ran with that too. They're trying to touch into the niches, but then they're doing some shady stuff. They're skipping some steps, and it's not good. It's not good for anyone involved. And this is also this is coming from somebody that collects errors. This individual, or that is interested in errors. So if he had an actual error, then he would have kept the card. I think that goes kind of without saying. So here's a little list of the submission, the one that contained that Charizard, just to show you guys that he did send me the receipts for that. We have the laminated cards before they were peeled. That's what they looked like. Oh, we got the Blastoise. Is that Protostoise? That's not Protostoise. This is the Japanese one. We got the Mew. This is what the layer looks like when he yanked it off. This one here kind of left the top part, so I guess it didn't quite adhere properly all from top to bottom. But you can see here we're just left with essentially just a white layer. So it is pulling ink off without necessarily damaging the foil or the white layer. And let's see here. We do have the PWCC listing is gone, which is a surprise because I've sent them information on stuff that was trimmed before. And it seems like maybe PWCC is improving. I kind of doubt it. Maybe it's just the fact that CGC was, shitting their absolute pants and saying like, hey, you got to take this off of here. It's embarrassing. We embarrassed ourselves. But I don't know. It's hard to say. PWCC, if they can, that you can show them before and after pictures of something that was trimmed, and they will refuse to take it off. Their employees are a joke. They're a joke. Hopefully they figure their stuff out. If anyone doesn't remember, they were also kicked off of eBay. And eBay's statement led everyone to believe that they were shill bidding on there. They have employees who have admitted to purchasing stuff off the platform. They're not supposed to. There's a whole lot of bad stuff that goes on there. If there's something on PWCC that you want and it's a good deal, by all means. I'm not saying that they shill bid every single auction in existence, but just know that if you can support elsewhere, you should probably do so. I don't know what PWCC is doing now. There was they sold it because it's a mess. It was a mess. It's always been a mess. Auction platforms like that, they're kind of sketchy. And being kicked off at eBay is pretty sketchy. You got to be pretty sketchy to be making eBay a ton of money and for them to kick your ass off the platform. Oh, okay. So, he says that he contacted CGC about the card and waiting to hear back from them. And then this was the result here that we found. He says no new updates. Sadly, I can't find the peelings and it's bumming me out. I made a post about it on Instagram and someone asked why the Japanese cards peeled everything and the English Charizard had a pattern. The only answer I can think of is the card stock is different on the English and Japanese. So I wouldn't say that it's the card stock. I'd say that the ink is probably different. I'm sure it's a different process. Old Japanese cards versus old English cards. They're not using the same equipment. They're not using the same ink. It wasn't the same people that were printing it. We have Wizards of the Coast that was printing through other companies, It wasn't necessarily the same process or materials used as the Japanese cards. It's similar because it's a trading card, but that's about it. He says, no response from the guy I sold it to on eBay. No response from CGC. They did end up responding eventually. So people can believe my story or not. Honestly, I just know with 1,000% certainty how that Charizard got the damage, and wanted to let people know me and trust me that they should not attempt to offer on the card thinking it's a factory obstruction error. Yeah, so that's the thing, and we'll see if there anything develops in terms of like updates on this of who submitted, whether they were doing so like in bad faith or whether they honestly thought they had an error, and or maybe I really doubt the fact. It's probably a very slim chance that they just sent it to CGC because they wanted it in a CGC slab. I think they were going for the error, but I think the intention there is the biggest thing. Maybe they thought it was an error. Maybe they thought that there was a big payday. Maybe they knew it wasn't an error and they were hoping CGC would slip up. Regardless, CGC slipped up. They embarrassed themselves on this one. I told you it was going to happen. It's not going to be the last time, I'm sure. And again, guys, I don't like grading companies. I think it's a waste of money. I think you're paying minimum wage employees to give you an opinion on some crap. This is a prime example here of something that wasn't authentic in the way that they designated on the label. And that's by all means. And I have to make this clear every single time. If you like grading cards, if you like collecting graded cards, if you know, just know the card inside, buy the card, not the grade, know the card, not the grade, know that it's authentic, know the backstory, because you can't just blindly rely on the grading companies to get it right, because they often don't. They're trying to pump in and out as many cards as possible. CGC is trying to put on a little pole dance that is grading everything and calling it an error that other companies won't. They think they've found their niche. They think they're superstar error grader 69s, but they're not. They're not doing enough research on this stuff. They got to be careful with it, and that shows right here. Anyway, I gotta go. Thank you for joining the Discord. Come on into the happy hour tonight. It's going to be a good time in the Discord. We got a voice and video chat. If you want to open Pokemon cards with other people, if you want to show off what you bought recently, if you just want to come in and hang out, do so. Do it. Get in there. Come on. See you next time. Bye.